I was halfway through my fishing trip in Montana when my phone rang. Sun on my back, rod in my hands, peace in my chest. That rare kind of calm that only comes when you're far from cell towers, spreadsheets, and shallow smiles. But the signal found me anyway. And with it, so did the storm. "Hey," came her voice. Sweet as syrup. A little too sweet. "Clara? Everything okay?" I reeled in slowly, more out of instinct than focus. Something in her tone smelled like trouble. She sighed loudly. "I just wanted to let you know I sold the farm." I blinked. "You what?" "Sold it. 1 million even. Quick deal. All cash." My heart didn't just skip a beat. It dropped into a canyon. That farm had been in my family for 3 generations. I built the irrigation system myself, replaced the barn roof shingle by shingle, even buried my old hound Max under the pecan tree by the silo. And now she'd what? Sold it like some second-hand love seat on Craigslist? "You sold Sterling Hill." My voice cracked. Without telling me, Clara chuckled. "It's just land, babe. And anyway, I used the money to help Marcus. His business needed capital. He's about to go international." Silence. Not even the birds chirped. Marcus. Her boyfriend. Not a name she said with shame, mind you, but with pride. The kind of pride a woman saves for a man she thinks has vision. Meanwhile, I was the one who cleaned chicken coops and fixed fence posts so her yoga retreats and essential oil emporium could keep draining the checking account. "You sold my family farm for a man who can't even keep a coffee shop open in Denver?" "He needed it, Michael," she snapped, as if I were the selfish one. "More than you did." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just ended the call, canceled my return ticket, and drove straight home, 12 hours without a stop. Every mile fed a fire I didn't know I still had in me. And when I pulled up the gravel drive, ready to confront the wreckage of my life, I saw it. And I laughed. Not a bitter laugh. Not angry. Just the slow, growing laughter of a man who knows he's just won a game nobody knew they were playing. You see, the farm she sold wasn't my farm. No, that poor sap who handed her $1 million got a patch of dirt I bought last year. A decoy plot. 50 barren acres I picked up at auction for $45,000, just to keep the zoning board off my back while I moved the real operation inland. The real Sterling Hill? Nestled behind a land trust under my grandfather's LLC. My actual business? Not chickens or corn, but hydroponic hemp. The kind that turns profits faster than an Instagram scandal. She sold him a dust bowl, and I kept the gold mine. And that was just the beginning. I stepped out of the truck, boots crunching the gravel like broken promises underfoot. The house looked the same. White porch, creaky swing, the ghost of Clara's herbs still wilting in the window boxes. But everything inside me had changed. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a man building something bigger than forgiveness could ever reach. I walked up to the porch, past the sold sign crooked in the yard like a slap in the face. She hadn't even bothered to remove the Sterling Hill branding from the mailbox. The new owner would figure out soon enough he bought a name and a patch of drought-baked soil. Clara had left in a hurry. I could tell because her yoga mat still lay rolled in the corner, and her essential oils were scattered like she tried to take them and gave up halfway. I found a folder on the kitchen counter, purchase agreement, notarized with her sloppy signature, and a wire transfer receipt to MA Consultations. That was Marcus's so-called business, the one he ran out of a WeWork space with more buzzwords than balance sheets. She'd done it, sold the land, gave him every penny, and thought she'd left me high and dry. Thing is, Clara never understood me. She thought I was just some overalls and hayseed idiot too sentimental to see past a barn door. But I learned from my grandfather, and he played a long game. When Clara started getting squirrely, nights out, new perfume, her phone suddenly surgically attached to her palm, I started digging. Not into her life, into the ground. That's when I moved operations to the east side, behind the tree line, behind the pond, behind the LLC nobody but me and my lawyer knew existed. 50 acres of controlled, licensed, vertical grow. Hemp, high-grade and legal. The kind Fortune 500 wellness brands pay 6 figures a pallet for. She thought I was broke. Thought she could sell me out and ride shotgun in some tech bro fantasy. Let her. I walked out back, past the chicken coop that hadn't housed a bird in months, and down the trail behind the woodshed. There it was, my real operation. Hidden beneath an old grain elevator, remodeled with biometric locks and HVAC systems NASA would envy. I stepped inside, and the lights flickered on like a silent choir. Rows of green, stretching under LEDs. Monitors humming. A soft, rich scent that smelled like redemption. Everything was still here. Thriving. Untouched. Clara hadn't sold my farm. She sold her own future. By the next morning, the sun cut through the kitchen like a blade. I poured myself a cup of coffee, black, no sugar, and sat where Clara once hosted her little manifestation brunches. I used to smile through them, nodding while she and her friends talked about vibrations and intentional living. They thought my silence was ignorance. In truth, it was patience. And patience? It's a hell of a weapon when you're married to a woman who can't stop swinging. I opened my laptop and pulled up the deed. The parcel she sold, Lot 12A, was registered to Sterling Hill Agricultural Services. Sounds official, doesn't it? That's because I made it sound official. A decoy entity parked under a subsidiary with just enough paperwork to pass casual scrutiny. Lot 12A had nothing but a rusted irrigation pipe and soil with the nutritional value of packing peanuts. I'd salted that land figuratively, not literally, by planting every kind of bureaucratic obstacle I could. Zoning red flags, building restrictions, expired pesticide licenses. Whoever bought it wouldn't be able to raise a tomato without submitting 2 years' worth of remediation plans. I designed it to look like value. And Clara, in all her impulsive, Prada-blinded confidence, handed it off like a warm muffin at a bake sale. She didn't just betray me. She underestimated me. That was her second mistake. The first? Thinking Marcus was a builder. The man couldn't build a bookshelf without outsourcing it to IKEA and then blaming the instructions for his crooked screws. I needed to know more. About their affair. About the money. About what exactly she thought she'd walked away with. So I called in a favor from an old college roommate, Teddy. Now works in private finance and moonlights in forensic accounting for fun. Run MA consultations, I told him. I want names, partners, paper trails. Everything. Teddy chuckled. You got it. Need it clean, or you want it dirty? Both, I said. Let's make this educational. Meanwhile, I visited the county clerk's office. They're not used to someone in boots and a Carhartt jacket asking for parcel audits, but they handed over the files. I reviewed them all, Clara's notarized signatures, the rushed title transfer, and get this, she'd used my social security number to authorize the sale. Said I was traveling and unavailable. Forged a consent form. Identity fraud. Federal offense. I could have nailed her to the courthouse wall that day, but I didn't, because I wasn't finished watching her dig. That night, I drove to town. Parked across from Marcus's office, a converted yoga studio turned wannabe crypto incubator. I watched the lights flicker on. Watched her car pull up. Watched them kiss like teenagers. My wife and the man she chose over me. Laughing. Carefree. Thinking they won. Good. Let them think they did. Because once a house of mirrors starts cracking, you don't need to touch the glass. You just wait for the reflections to slice them apart. 3 days after I watched them from the parking lot, Teddy called me back. You sitting down? He said. I smiled. Should I be? Oh yeah. Marcus's MA consultations? Registered under a Delaware shell, go figure. But that thing's bleeding faster than a stuck hog. Your wife didn't invest in a business. She dropped $1 million into a fire pit. Tell me everything, I said, already opening a blank folder on my desktop. Teddy laid it out. Marcus had no clients, no contracts, and no revenue. Just an idea he kept pitching to bored venture capitalists, a blockchain-based holistic wellness marketplace. Whatever that means. His only cash flow came from Clara's wire transfer, which he used to lease a high-rise office, buy a brand new BMW 7 Series, and take out a line of credit he immediately maxed out on, furniture. Italian leather, no less. A man with no income spending like a sultan on borrowed time. It wasn't a company. It was a midlife crisis with a logo. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it was textbook. Clara, who once lectured me on being financially grounded, had just given away our legacy to a man who thought QuickBooks was a dating app. But here's the part that really hit. They didn't know yet. They were still walking around with that delusional swagger, thinking they'd leveled up, when in reality they were standing in the middle of a slow-motion collapse. They sold my past, thinking they'd purchased their future. But I still owned the present. And I was about to make it very uncomfortable. I called up Jackson, my estate attorney. Hey, I said, I want to initiate proceedings to invalidate a fraudulent property sale. And while you're at it, get a private investigator with digital forensics on speed dial. Jackson paused. What exactly are we looking for? Everything. Start with Clara's phone records and any joint accounts she didn't know I locked down 2 weeks ago. Then Marcus's spending. I want timestamps, receipts, his favorite coffee order. I want to know if this clown uses oat milk or lies and says he's lactose intolerant. Jackson laughed. You sound chipper. I am, I said. She thinks she stole my farm. I'm just curious how she'll look when she realizes she can't even afford to buy back a tractor. Later that night, I went back to the grow site. It was harvest season, and the new shipment was already curing. The lab results were perfect, 0 contaminants, 18% CBD content, terpene profile like a symphony. I already had a distributor lined up from Seattle offering triple the wholesale price. $1 million farm? Please. I made that in 4 quarters. So I started drafting a press release, not under my name, but under the brand, Sterling Botanics. A quiet announcement about the expansion of our sustainable medicinal hemp initiative and a new round of funding. A few key media outlets. A couple whispers through the agriculture network. Why? Because when you pull a con, image is everything. And Clara was about to find out what happens when your house of cards tries to sit next to a skyscraper. They say if you want to kill a lie, starve it of silence. I didn't. I lit it on fire and served cocktails around the blaze. The press release dropped on a Wednesday. Nothing flashy. Just a clean announcement. Sterling Botanics has secured a 7-figure distribution deal and is expanding production by 40% through its flagship facility in East Glenn County. It mentioned exclusive partnerships and legacy agricultural innovation. No names. No bragging. Just facts. The kind that ripple through markets and whisper down corporate corridors. Within 6 hours, I got a call from Edra Talley, the acquisitions VP from West Grove Naturals. She'd been sniffing around for months. Said she wanted to touch base about your recent growth. Translation, she wanted a piece of what Clara threw away. I played it cool. We're not entertaining offers right now, I said. But I appreciate your interest. Is this Michael Sterling? She asked. It is. The Michael Sterling whose wife sold Sterling Hill Farm to MA Consultations? I smiled. Ah, there it was. That was a separate entity. The land she sold wasn't our active asset. We've since consolidated. The pause on her end was pure gold. She got it. And so would everyone else. That night, the whispers turned into a quiet roar. A tweet from an agriculture reporter. Word on the street is the Sterling Farm deal was a shell sale. Buyer thought he was getting gold, but got topsoil and broken pipe. Meanwhile, the real operation just signed a 7-figure deal. Oof. I didn't post it. Didn't even like it. But I made sure to send the screenshot to Teddy. How long before Marcus and Clara see this? I asked. They probably already did, he replied. Marcus follows half the AG tech world and thinks he invented blockchain mulch. Sure enough, the next day Clara called. Blocked number. I answered. Michael, she said, her voice tight with manufactured calm. We need to talk. You mean about how you sold a decoy lot while I kept the crown jewel? Silence. You played me, she said quietly. No, Clara. You played yourself. I just watched. She tried to backpedal. Said Marcus. Wasn't honest with her, and she didn't understand the full picture. Claimed she only wanted to help someone who had potential. I let her spiral. I wanted to hear the desperation bloom in real time. Then I cut in. You know what your real mistake was, Clara? She didn't answer. You thought a man who builds with his hands doesn't plan with his mind. She hung up. That night, Marcus deleted his Instagram. The one where he posted photos of his leased BMW and brunches with captions like manifesting legacy. Turns out, bankruptcy court doesn't care about hashtags. By Friday, Clara's name was trending at least among people who mattered in our circles. Not because of some scandalous expose. No, this wasn't the trashy tabloid kind of humiliation. This was worse. This was the kind of silence that follows a gunshot in a quiet church. See, her crowd wasn't built for disgrace. Pilates and Prosecco types, image-addicted and allergic to consequence. When the whispers started that she'd dumped $1 million into a ghost startup, money that wasn't even hers, mind you, they didn't ask questions. They distanced themselves. One by one, her friends untagged her on social media. Her yoga instructor quietly refunded her monthly dues. Even the boutique she adored suddenly stopped sending her invites to those exclusive trunk shows she loved posting about. I heard all of it through my cousin's wife, Brittany. Sweet girl. Terrible at keeping secrets. She showed up at the co-op in tears, Brittany told me, barely whispering. Said she was lied to by everyone. Then had a meltdown because no one would return her texts. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my coffee. Sounds like a tough week. Brittany hesitated. She also said, "You ruined her life." I chuckled. Funny. I remember her doing a fine job of that herself. Now Marcus? Oh, he was unraveling like a ball of twine in a windstorm. Turns out he had no idea what kind of land he'd bought. When the permits got denied and the contractors walked away laughing, he tried to sue. Filed some nonsense about misrepresentation. Too bad the sale paperwork clearly showed he waived inspection. Clara even insisted on it, trying to rush the deal through before I got back from my trip. She was so desperate to rip the rug out from under me, she never realized it was a decoy rug on a fake floor in a room I'd already boarded up. I sent the whole file to my attorney and told him to forward it to the county clerk and the bank holding Marcus's lease. Let's just say credit doesn't love lawsuits. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I met with my attorney again. Sat down in his office, leather chair, glass of water, that quiet hum of justice brewing. I want to freeze the remaining joint assets, I said. And I want a forensic audit. Jackson raised an eyebrow. Divorce? Not yet, I replied. Let's give her a chance to explain why there's $14,872 missing from our savings. And maybe she can explain what the Lavender Nest LLC is while she's at it. I knew what it was. A little side hustle she tried to launch, bath salts, candles, healing moss, whatever that was. She used my money to fund her delusions and Marcus's pipe dreams. They thought they'd write a new chapter in my story. They didn't know I was the one holding the pen, and I'd already outlined their epilogue. The day Clara showed up at my office was the first time I'd seen her in person since the call. She looked different. Not in the obvious ways. Her hair was still perfectly waved, her nails still manicured in that muted beige she thought looked professional. But beneath it, the cracks were everywhere. Her blouse was wrinkled. Her eyes, normally sharp and calculating, were clouded, darting. Like someone who'd finally realized the cliff wasn't a metaphor. "Michael, we need to talk," she said, standing in the doorway like she still belonged in my life. I didn't invite her in. Then talk. She hesitated, glancing behind her, probably making sure nobody she knew saw her standing there, pleading with the man she thought she could discard. "I made a mistake," she said softly. "You'll need to be more specific," I replied. "There's quite the buffet to choose from." She flinched. "Good. I wasn't thinking straight." Marcus said a lot of things, I'm sure. "Tell me, Clara, does he say anything now that the walls are closing in? Or is he too busy trying to convince a judge his office furniture was a tax write-off?" Silence. She clutched her bag tighter, the one I bought her for our anniversary. I remember now she'd asked for that specific model because some influencer posted about it. "I'm losing everything," she said, a tear slipping down her cheek. "No," I said, standing slowly, voice even. "You already lost everything. You just didn't realize it until your name stopped getting you free cocktails." She tried to come closer. "Michael, I know I hurt you, but can't we?" I laughed. Not cruelly, not loudly, just enough to stop her in her tracks. "No, Clara, we can't. Because you didn't hurt me." "Not really." She blinked, confused. "What? You heard a version of me that doesn't exist anymore. That man you walked away from? He's gone. And the one standing in front of you?" I leaned in, eyes locked on hers. "He doesn't beg. He doesn't bend. And he sure as hell doesn't forgive betrayal disguised as ambition." She stood frozen, trembling slightly. Not from cold. From recognition. From knowing, finally, what I was. The man who saw her mask fall and didn't flinch. "Please," she whispered. "I have nowhere else to go." "That's the price of burning bridges," I said, turning back to my desk. "Eventually, you find yourself on an island." She stood there for a moment longer, waiting, hoping I'd soften. I didn't. She left quietly, the click of her heels sounding more like punctuation marks than footsteps. The final sentence of a story she thought she authored. But I was the ghostwriter. The morning after Clara's walk of shame out of my office, I met Jackson at the county courthouse. We weren't filing for divorce yet. No, that would have been too clean, too merciful. We were filing for reclamation. Petition to nullify the sale of Lot 12A on the grounds of fraudulent misrepresentation, identity theft, and lack of full spousal consent, Jackson said, placing the file on the clerk's counter like a chess piece dropped on the board. I didn't need the land back. I already had better. But I wanted it on record that the deal was poison, that Clara sold what she didn't own, and the transaction was soaked in deceit. Not just for the legal record, but for posterity, for the story. Clara's name was all over the paperwork, and Marcus? He signed documents that required spousal verification. And thanks to Teddy and the forensic sweep, we had metadata, timestamps, even GPS records showing I was nowhere near a notary's office when that signature went down. We handed over everything, every damning detail, every receipt. By the time the clerk was done processing the file, even she looked up at me with a hint of sympathy. "Someone's in trouble," she muttered. I nodded. "Not me." Later that afternoon, Teddy sent over the final financial report. Clara's spending habits? Wild. She drained every shared account and funneled thousands into the Lavender Nest LLC, which, get this, had zero sales but over $18,000 in branding consultation charges. All to some guy named Brenton who runs an energy alignment firm in Sedona. She bought crystals. With my savings. I called Jackson again. "We're adding a fraud clause to the prenup," I said. "Retroactively, based on misrepresentation and undisclosed financial behavior." He laughed. "You want to amend a prenup? That's bold. So is pretending you're Gwyneth Paltrow with a credit card and no conscience." We filed that too. But the real beauty? That came when I sent Marcus a letter. No lawyers. No threats. Just a printed sheet, hand-signed. "Dear Marcus, as the rightful owner and architect of Sterling Botanics, I would like to thank you for your recent acquisition of a wholly non-functional parcel of land. Your investment has indirectly funded the final phase of our expansion. If you'd like to visit what a real agricultural operation looks like, I'd be happy to offer a tour, $50 per head. Group discounts available. Best, Michael Sterling." I heard through Teddy's brother, who works IT at the bank, that Marcus showed up the next day trying to freeze what was left of Clara's deposit before the lawsuit hit. Too late. The money had already been used to pay off one of my short-term loans on the Real Grow site. In a way, they did help my business grow. That's irony. And I farm it better than corn. I should have known she wouldn't go quietly. Clara never did anything without a performance. So it didn't surprise me when a week after filing the asset fraud complaint, I got served. At my office, no less. The courier was young, flustered, and clearly new. "Mr. Sterling, you've been named in a civil suit for emotional damages, undue hardship, and financial coercion." I stared at him, then looked at the envelope. Yep. Real name, official stamp, courthouse seal. Clara had filed a suit. Against me. The accusation? That I'd manipulated her financially, created a hostile and emotionally abusive dynamic, and, my personal favorite, orchestrated a retaliatory campaign to destroy her reputation in the community. I signed the receipt and smiled. "You got a tip jar, son?" He blinked. No. Pity. This delivery deserves a standing ovation." He left. I went inside and called Jackson. "She's suing," I said, tossing the envelope on the desk. There was a pause, then a sigh. "She's grasping. She has no case, but she'll drag this out for sympathy. Make you look like the villain. Paint herself as a victim of a vindictive patriarch." I leaned back. "Let her try. She wants to dance in front of a judge. She better know the steps." He chuckled. "We'll counter. Defamation, financial abuse of marital assets, misappropriation, and, don't forget, the fraudulent land sale. We'll stack it so high she'll need a Sherpa just to climb out of the paperwork." I nodded. "Make it stick." But I wasn't done. Not yet. Clara thought she could leverage public opinion. Thought she'd post something heartfelt on social media and rally the Instagram warriors. And she tried. Oh, she tried. A long post. A black and white photo of her looking out a window, real melancholy-like. A caption about healing from narcissistic abuse, finding her truth, and how betrayal cuts deepest from the people who vowed to protect you. She ended it with, "But I refuse to be silenced. #survivor, #reclaim your voice." Comments poured in. Some believed her. Others weren't so sure. One in particular caught my eye. "Didn't you spend your husband's money on your boyfriend's fake company, though?" She deleted it in under 10 minutes. The next day, the press release I'd quietly greenlit 2 weeks ago dropped. Sterling Botanics, officially launching its own nonprofit foundation to help small farmers displaced by fraud, debt, or domestic manipulation. Name? The Sterling Root Initiative. Dedicated to rebuilding what was stolen, empowering what was dismissed, and preserving generational legacies. Clara's suit might win her a pity parade, but I was planting forests. Courtrooms are cold in the way hospitals are cold, not because of the air conditioning, but because of what they represent. You don't walk into them unless something's broken. And Clara? She was about to find out just how shattered her story really was. She walked in flanked by a lawyer from some boutique firm downtown. Younger guy, slick hair, smug face. The kind that orders martinis just to swirl them while he monologues about constitutional rights. He probably thought this was going to be a slam dunk. Me? I wore the same boots I rebuilt the real farm in. Not for nostalgia, for effect. Let the jury see who built and who betrayed. The judge, a sharp woman in her 50s with reading glasses that made her squint like a hawk, called us to order. Clara's lawyer launched into his performance. Words like gaslighting, financial coercion, emotional neglect. He painted her as a woman abandoned, dismissed, devalued. A flower wilted under the shadow of an overbearing man. I didn't interrupt. I just watched. Calm. Silent. Controlled. Then it was our turn. Jackson didn't shout. He didn't strut. He just presented, cold, brutal, undeniable. He showed bank transfers. The burner phone records. Text between her and Marcus outlining the scheme. The forged signature on the land deed. The shell business. The lavender nest scam. Then came the footage. Security cam video, Marcus entering my home while I was gone. Clara letting him in. Them in my kitchen. Laughing. Drinking wine. Plotting. It played in total silence. Even Clara didn't look up. The judge's pen stopped moving halfway through the playback. Then Jackson dropped the final card, a certified appraisal showing the actual value of the decoy lot at the time of sale. $45,200. She sold it for $1 million. That's not betrayal, he said, looking the judge square in the eye. That's premeditated fraud disguised as marital freedom. And just like that, the courtroom was ice. Clara's attorney asked for a recess. The judge granted it, but everyone in that room knew it was a formality. When they came back, Clara was pale, hands trembling. Her lipstick smeared at the corner like she'd wiped away tears too quickly. The judge took 15 minutes to rule. 15. I've waited longer for a sandwich. Then she laid it out. The emotional abuse claim? Dismissed. The civil suit? Invalid. The forged deed? Under review for criminal referral. The remaining joint assets? Frozen. Pending audit. And the best part? Clara was ordered to pay reparations. A restitution payment to me for misappropriated funds and willful economic sabotage. She stared at the floor as the judgment was read. Didn't look at me once. I didn't smile. This wasn't victory. It was clarity. And clarity doesn't roar, it just ends the noise. After the ruling, there was no scene. No collapse. No gasping sobs like some courtroom drama. Clara just sat there. Still. The kind of stillness that comes not from shock, but realization. Like someone who just noticed the hole they dug is now too deep to climb out of. Her lawyer patted her arm. She didn't move. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and nodded politely to the judge. Game over. Time to collect the pieces. Outside, Jackson joined me on the courthouse steps, flipping through his notes. We've got the green light to begin property recovery, he said. Her accounts are officially locked, and we're pursuing a lien on any future income if she can't repay the restitution. Don't push it too fast, I said. Let her stew a bit. Let her see what she's really left with. He nodded, understanding. Justice doesn't need to sprint. It walks, slow and deliberate, like a man measuring wood before the final nail. That weekend, I went back to the real farm. The real Sterling Hill. Greenhouse humming, vertical grow rows bursting with yield, the hum of purpose in every corner. I walked past the secure entry, past the irrigation panel, into the central processing lab. Jacob, my lead botanist, looked up from his monitor. We just passed inspection, he said. You're clear for national distribution. I nodded. Good. Let's expand the charity arm. I want half our profits this quarter earmarked for startup grants, rural veterans, single parents, people who got steamrolled by snakes like Clara and Marcus. He grinned. You're turning revenge into philanthropy? No, I said. Just making sure the wreckage she left behind becomes someone else's foundation. That's the thing Clara never understood. Real legacy isn't built in luxury, it's built in dignity. In truth. In roots. And my roots? They were thriving. Back in town, whispers started taking shape. Not from me, I never said a word. But in a place like ours, word spreads through the walls. People noticed when Clara moved into a small one-bedroom above the old bakery. When she sold the BMW Marcus bought her on credit. When she started bartending at a wine bar that didn't accept tips because her wages were already being garnished. Marcus? Gone. Vanished from town with a wake of debt and failed NDAs. Last I heard, he was trying to peddle a podcast about disruptive leadership and couldn't even get a Patreon account verified. The same people who once called them visionary now lowered their voices when their names came up. Even snakes have a scent, and the town had finally caught wind. One night, I drove past that old decoy lot. The weeds were taller now, brown and twisted. The sign still stood, a for lease placard, sun-faded and crooked. $1 million joke etched in silence. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. I already owned the punchline. Life didn't go back to normal. It moved forward, like it always does, but with a different kind of gravity. Quieter, heavier, sharper. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the same way. That kind of fury burns hot and fast. But what stayed? That was something else entirely. Not rage. Resolve. The kind that creeps in when you finally understand what you've been living through and decide it won't define you. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Postmarked out of state. No return address, just the initials RS scrawled on the back. Marcus. Curiosity 1. I opened it. 4 lines in ballpoint pen, written like a confession scratched on the back of a napkin. Didn't know she'd sold a fake farm. Didn't know you were 10 steps ahead. I should have walked away. Tell her I'm sorry. Or don't. I wouldn't. I stared at it a while. Then fed it to the fire pit and poured myself a drink. A week later, I got a call from the bank. A loan Clara had co-signed back when we were still playing house had come due. She couldn't pay it. Do you want to assume it? The banker asked. I laughed. No. Let her find out what the word consequence really means. She filed for bankruptcy 2 weeks later. I didn't contest it. I didn't need to. She wouldn't be showing up in my rear view anymore. No more attempts at reconciliation. No desperate texts. No teary voicemails. Just silence. The kind that fills the empty space where someone used to sit and scheme. She vanished. Not in a dramatic blaze. Just quietly. A queen with no kingdom, no war chest, and no pawns left to play. Meanwhile, I kept building. Sterling Botanics partnered with 2 national wellness brands. My team grew from 3 to 14. I brought in local hires. Paid above market. Offered health care. One of the new guys, Luis, told me on his first day, "You're not what I expected." I asked him what he meant. He said, "You own all this, but you're still the first one in the dirt." I just smiled. There's no substitute for earned dirt. That's what Clara never understood. She thought you could buy roots. You can't. You plant them. You water them. You bleed into the soil. And one day, they hold you up when everything else falls. Then came the letter that changed everything again. Not from Clara. Not from Marcus. From a woman named Judith Sterling. My father's cousin. A name I hadn't heard since I was 12. She'd found the press on Sterling Botanics. Read about the charity work. The restitution case. She wrote, "Michael, you don't know me well, but I remember your father. I remember Sterling Hill when it was just rows of corn and stubborn hope. I've been holding on to something for years, deeds, notes, records. I think they belong to you now. There's more to your inheritance than you think." Inside was a copy of a deed. Sterling Hill West. 58 acres. Untouched. Never listed. Never sold. Still in the family name. Still mine. I sat on my porch that night, holding that deed like it was written in stone instead of paper. 58 acres. Sterling Hill West. My father never mentioned it. Neither did my grandfather. But here it was, tucked away in a safety deposit box, guarded by a cousin who kept to herself, waiting for the right hands to open it. I called Judith. "Didn't think I'd hear from you this soon," she said, her voice steady but warm. The kind of voice that carried family secrets like heirlooms wrapped in cloth. "You held this back," I said. Not accusing. Just aware. "I did," she replied, "because I wasn't sure you were the one who'd protect it. You grew up watching your mother scream at your father for putting seeds in dirt instead of money in banks. I needed to see if you were made of something different. And I asked. I saw the court filing. I saw the nonprofit. I saw how you stayed quiet when you could have burned them alive in the press. That land's been waiting for someone who builds legacies instead of performing them." I exhaled slowly. The truth hit different when it's earned, not handed. She gave me directions, told me where the property line started, past the creek, behind the ridge, where the old cedar split in 2 from lightning but still stood. "You'll know it when you see it," she said. "Your grandfather planted the sycamores in a cross formation. Said someday it would guide the right Sterling home." That night I didn't sleep. The next morning, I drove out with nothing but boots, gloves, and a thermos full of black coffee. Hiked through the tree line, past wild brush and forgotten paths. Then I saw it. 4 tall sycamores standing in a perfect cross. In the center, a flat stone engraved with the Sterling family crest, Subtle, weather-worn, almost invisible. No monument. No fanfare. Just soil that knew my name before I did. The land was raw but healthy. Elevation solid. Drainage perfect. Quiet, untouched, full of the kind of promise Clara never could have recognized because it didn't glitter. She sold the name. I inherited the soul. When I got back to town, I called a surveyor. We walked the entire boundary together, marking every post and logging every detail. I had plans already, an expansion lab, solar arrays, and a soil regeneration project that would turn those 58 acres into the flagship for sustainable agriculture in the entire region. Judith called again that evening. "There's something else," she said. Of course there was. "You remember your Uncle Warren?" she asked. "Barely," I said. "Always wore flannel even in the summer. Smelled like pipe smoke." "He's got records," she said. "He was keeping track of what your dad tried to build before the fire, the original blueprint for what Sterling Botanics became." Blueprints? My blood ran cold. I thought I built everything from scratch. But maybe I was just picking up where he left off. The next time I saw Uncle Warren, he was sitting on his front porch, rocking slowly in that old pinewood chair he'd had since before my voice cracked. "You took your sweet time, boy," he said, without looking up. I half smiled. "Had to survive the storm first. That's what your daddy used to say," he muttered, then pushed himself up, slowly, like everything he did was deliberate, and walked inside without another word. I followed. He handed me a metal lockbox. No key. Just rust, dust, and the weight of something unspoken. "Your father left this with me the night before he signed over half the East Field to cover Clara's first business loan. Said if things ever went sideways, you'd know when to open it." It cracked open with one twist of my crowbar. Inside? Blueprints. Business plans. Soil analytics. Letters. Letters. Handwritten ones, addressed to me. My name in his hard, slanted print. My dad was a man of dirt, not words. But he wrote. And what he wrote stopped me cold. "Son, if you're reading this, it means the pieces fell apart like I feared. It means you saw through the shine and the charm and realized what she was. I couldn't stop her from leeching your future. But I could protect the part of you she never understood. The land doesn't lie, son. People do. But dirt? Dirt always tells the truth. Build something she can't ever reach. Not with a lie. Not with a lawsuit. Not even with love. Build it for you. And for whoever comes after. P.S. The Westfield's soil is alkaline-rich. Use gypsum to balance it." I folded the letter, tucked it into my wallet. That's where it stays now. Not in a frame. Not in a drawer. On me. Later that night, I sent Clara one final email. Not angry. Not cruel. Just final. "Clara, by now, you've likely heard about the West expansion. Don't worry. Your name isn't on it. Not on the deeds. Not in the paperwork. Not in the press releases. Your chapter in this story ended the moment you decided the man building our future was worth less than the boy pitching yours. There is no bridge left to burn. There is no apology left to give. And there is no role for you in what comes next. Stay gone. M." I didn't expect a response. I didn't get one. Instead, I heard she tried to apply for a loan using her maiden name. Denied. Word travels. Her LinkedIn still says brand consultant. Still selling the image. But there are no brands left that trust her name. Back at the farm, my crew and I started breaking ground on the new lab. I stood there as the sun cracked the horizon, boots sunk in fresh dirt. I thought about her. Just for a moment. Not out of longing. Out of gratitude. If she hadn't betrayed me, I'd never have known what I was capable of. The phone call came from a reporter out of Austin. Big agricultural journal. Sharp woman. She didn't waste time with small talk. "Mr. Sterling, I've been following your nonprofit's progress, the Sterling Root Initiative. Impressive numbers. Quiet impact. Mind if we run a piece on the foundation? Could even do a sidebar on Sterling Botanics if you're willing." I took a breath. Stared out the window at the new greenhouse going up behind the ridge. Part of me wanted to say no. Keep it quiet. Keep it clean. But another part? The part she tried to bury? That part said, yes. Let them see. So I agreed. 2 weeks later, the feature ran. Front page of American Cultivator's business section. From betrayal to botanics, how Michael Sterling turned a $1 million scam into a new era of farming. The subtitle read, "A story of legacy, deception, and the quiet power of rebuilding from the ground up." It wasn't loud. It wasn't vengeful. It was surgical. The article laid it all out, without ever using Clara's name. She was a former spouse, an ex-partner, a A betrayal, nothing more than a shadow behind the spotlight. That's what ate her alive. I know because the next morning, my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in months. Unknown caller. But I knew. I let it ring. 5 minutes later, she texted. You made sure they erased me. I replied with a single sentence. You did that the moment you traded a man with roots for a boy with Wi-Fi. She never texted again. The fallout? Phenomenal. Donors started flooding in. Farms across the state reached out for help. 3 counties requested partnerships to teach regenerative soil practices using our model. And one of the top seed companies in the region offered a joint venture that would bring Sterling Botanics onto store shelves by spring. All without selling an ounce of my soul. And all without her. At the ribbon cutting for the new processing center, my foreman handed me a letter someone dropped off anonymously. It was from her. Again. But this one was different. Short. Ink smudged. Maybe tears. Maybe just the weather. You were always going to win, weren't you? I just didn't know how badly I'd lose. I missed the smell of the dirt, of coming home to something real. You don't have to forgive me. I wouldn't. But I hope someday you can forget me. I folded the letter, walked out to the edge of the Westridge, and let the wind take it. She would get her wish. I wouldn't forgive her, but I would forget her. One seed at a time. The higher the branches climbed, the more attention we drew. Good press. Better investors. Sterling Botanics had gone from a regional whisper to a national model, rural innovation done right. But with the growth came the rot. Not from Clara. No, her chapter was closed, buried, and composted like bad seed. This came from someone else entirely. A man named Caldwell. Mid-50s. Wore a suit like armor and smiled like a dentist, too polished, too rehearsed. He showed up at the processing lab one afternoon, uninvited, holding a cappuccino he hadn't paid for and a business card that said Caldwell Equity Partners. Mr. Sterling, he said, I represent a consortium interested in acquiring a controlling stake in Sterling Botanics. We admire what you've built. We believe we can take it global. I stared at him. You want to buy me out of my own name? Not out, he said. Up. We'd keep you as the face. Figurehead. You'd have final say on creative direction. Creative direction, I repeated flatly. Yes, of course. Your legacy, your vision. We just handle the infrastructure. The scaling. You know how hard it is to keep a business pure at this size. I looked at him and saw a familiar glint. The same one I'd once seen in Clara's eyes when she told me Marcus had vision. It wasn't admiration. It was ambition, dressed up in diplomacy. I built this on my own hands, I said. I know exactly how to scale something without cutting off its soul. He laughed lightly. That's poetic. But soul doesn't pay shareholders. I stepped closer, voice low. I've already seen what happens when you hand over your soil to someone who doesn't understand the land. You know what I learned. Caldwell blinked. What's that? Wounds heal. But trust? That stuff doesn't regrow. He left, but not before handing me a revised offer. High 8 figures. I didn't tear it up. I framed it. Put it right next to the first eviction notice Clara ever forged my signature on. A reminder. Success isn't measured by what you earn. It's measured by what you refuse to sell. That night, Judith called again. Said she was proud. Said Uncle Warren cried watching the ribbon cutting on the news. And then she said something I wasn't expecting. You ever think about a family of your own? I didn't answer right away. Not because I hadn't thought about it. Because I had. I'd spent so long rebuilding from ashes that I'd forgotten about planning something for me. Not the business. Not the land. Me. There was a woman in town. Leah. Ran the local school's garden program. Smart. Steady. Kind in a way Clara could never fake. She dropped off grant paperwork weeks ago, and we'd shared a few coffees since. Maybe I'd give her a call. Maybe not. But for the first time in years, the thought didn't terrify me. It happened on a Tuesday. I was sorting inventory in the west storage shed, sleeves rolled, dirt on my hands, when I saw her car crawl up the gravel drive like it remembered the way better than she did. She stepped out slow. Careful. Like someone who knows the ground beneath them ain't friendly anymore. Clara. She looked smaller. Not physically, just reduced. The woman who once bought designer candles like they were moral victories now stood clutching a plain manila envelope like it contained her soul. I didn't move. Didn't call out. She walked up, her boots crunching over stone and memory. I need 5 minutes, she said. I shrugged. You've already taken more than most thieves do. She flinched. But she didn't run. Credit for that, I guess. I'm leaving town, she said. Permanently. I've got a job offer in Arizona. Temp work. Pays enough to keep a roof over my head. I waited. Let her talk. She held out the envelope. Inside's everything you wanted from me before I ever burned it down. Apologies, receipts, even a signed statement acknowledging what I did to your land, your accounts, your name. I didn't take it. Why now? She looked past me, toward the new solar array glinting behind the tree line. Because you did what I never could, she whispered. You built something that forgave you even when the people didn't. She paused. Her voice cracked. And I wanted to leave knowing maybe, somewhere, someone would remember I tried to set it right. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't a power play. It wasn't manipulation. It wasn't a chess move. It was surrender. And I wasn't mad. I was tired of carrying her ghost. So I took the envelope. Not for her. For me. For the record. For the next man who might find himself at the edge of betrayal wondering if dignity still has a pulse. It does. You just have to stop bleeding for people who cut you. She turned to leave. No dramatic parting words. No longing glances. Just the crunch of her boots fading. And as her car disappeared down the drive for the last time, I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood there in the dirt and felt light. Not empty. Free.